Welcome to Frankly Cars. On today's episode, we're going over my 1997 Nissan 240SX. So a little backstory on the car. I got it back in 2013 off of Craigslist. It came with a S13 SR20 DET, which was not the period correct engine that came in this car if you would have got it in Japan. If you would have got it in Japan, it would have came with the S14 SR20 DET. And the difference between those two engines was the S13 did not have variable cam timing, and the S14 did have variable cam timing. The intake manifold was slightly different. I think the turbo was a little bit different, stuff like that. When I got the car, it had about 220 horsepower, a stock T25 turbo. It had stance coilovers. It was slammed to the ground on stretch tires. It was more of a show car than it was like a fun car. And my idea of a good car is function over form rather than looking good. But that's your personal preference at the end of the day. So, you might be wondering why I'm standing in the engine bay and the engine's over there in the stand. That's a good question. Back in 2013, I was going to college. It was University of Northwestern Ohio for automotive high performance. And one of the cool things they did on the weekends was they had an autocross club. So I signed up for that. It was I did it one weekend. It was pretty good. Got to meet a lot of people there. We found out like a lot of people do drifting at the autocross club. So I'm like, oh, I'll try sliding it around and stuff like that. First time ever sliding a car around, that was kind of cool. Met a couple friends that were really into drifting. They really gave me some good pointers and stuff on like what to do and stuff like that. I was getting better the more I practiced. So a couple weeks go by, another autocross event was coming up. So same thing, drifting around, all that. But the fifth run came through the finish line and the car died. I'm like, okay, no big deal. Probably just forgot to let the clutch out. Adrenaline's all going and stuff. And then it just died. I'm like not thinking anything of it. So I started back up and all of a sudden you hear the motor knocking at the bottom. I'm like, oh boy, that's not good. So I parked the car, popped the hood on it, see what's going on. Can't see anything visually, so put the car in neutral, start it back up, and there's a knocking noise again, definitely bottom end. Definitely spun a bearing, I just didn't know what happened at the time. So one of the teachers that ran the event was nice enough to tow me back to my apartment at the time. Once we got the car in the garage, my friend from school brought up his engine hoist. We got the motor out of the car, got it up on the engine stand, looked over, started pulling it apart, looked over the cylinder head, didn't see anything up there, moved on to the lower section of the motor, pulled the pan off, you start seeing all the shavings in the pan, which we kind of expected after hearing the knocking noise. And we flipped the motor over, couldn't see anything visually, so we started spinning the engine over by hand. On one of the connecting rods, it kind of had a discolored tint to it. You could tell that like it heated up, so we took it apart, and that was the one that spun the bearing. That's why the motor's on the stand. But that was a couple years ago, and there's a lot been done to the motor since then, and I'm sure you'd like to see what's done to it, so let's go over that now, as soon as I get myself out of here. Oh God, oh God. Call life alert, that's how you get hurt. Motor time. Ooh yeah, right there, baby. Do I make you wrong, do I? Right. Oh yeah, very nice. Oh, cracking my, all right, there we go. All right, so let's go over the engine a little bit, what's been done to it and what kind of power we're expecting out of it and what we're really looking to get. All right, so starting off, we're gonna start with the top end. As you can see, initially, we got some Tomei adjustable cam gears. Don't be alarmed about the slack in the chain. The tensioner is not engaged right now. This is gonna give us more tuning capability when we're on the dyno, and if we wanna get the turbo to spool sooner or get the power band to move a certain way, we'll be able to do that with the adjustable cam gears a little bit. You can see here that these are rocker arm stoppers. This is an aftermarket option, not a factory thing. If you know anything about SR20s, you know that they have issues with the rocker arms when you tend to get a little crazy with them. If you can see down there, you can see this section right here. That is one end of the rocker arm. They just sit underneath the camshaft. There's nothing holding them down. It's just once you bolt the cam in and stuff, it just sits under there on top of the lifter. So there's that. And then speaking of camshafts, this is a Brian Crowler 264 cams, intake and exhaust. This is a good mild cam, not too aggressive, really streetable still. It'll give us good mid power band range with the turbo size that we have. Also, we have upgraded intake valves, Farah valves for the intake and exhaust side. They're stock size still. Also, you can see that there's little oil squirters here. You gotta make sure these are always not clogged up, because if these clog, it's gonna cause a premature cam wear and stuff on the lobes, which is something we actually had an issue with this engine earlier. We gotta get new injectors, had some issues with these also. Don't buy cheap injectors, folks. It'll trash your engine. That's one of the reasons why it was broken. We got the stock intake manifold. It's been powder coated black. You can see that color scheme of the engine is going to have a little red to it and stuff. So I got the pulleys to match. Painted the block. Let me get in this side so you can see painted the block an anodized color. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. so that'll look pretty good. We got the Canton Racing oil pan. It's got baffles inside. It goes from a 3-quart capacity to a 5-quart capacity. And those baffles, those little plates, there's little plates that flap. That'll allow the sump under higher G-force to still be able to suck up oil and not starve it. Moving on to the turbo, it's a Greddy TD0620G. This is a Mitsubishi housing, but they actually have Greddy internals inside. The turbo's been powder coated black, not the best job, I know. I was cheating. I was taking a cheat day, man. That's what happens. Yeah, and it looks like shit, but no one's gonna see that, so who cares? Compressor side, turbine side. Moving on to the turbine side of the turbo. This is a Kingwana housing. It's got the V-band set up. With this size housing, it should be able to spool a little bit quicker and still have a decent top end. What I'm expecting out of this turbo setup right now is, realistically, on pump gas, 375 wheel horsepower, realistic number. If you dig around on the forums and stuff, I've seen people get into the 420 range, but you might have to run a higher octane gas or use some water meth injection to get there. I don't know, we'll see when we get it in the car and how it runs and when it starts detonating on us. Exhaust manifold's off of eBay. You can see it's got this little adapter right here. This would be for like your pyrometer or pyrometer, however you say it. If you want to see your exhaust temps so you're not overheating stuff. You can also notice here that it's got 2 different flange setups here. So right now this is a T3 flange we're using, but you could go to a bigger size T4 if you were doing like a bigger turbo. But with what we're doing right now, we're more focused on spool than when you are making power. We got our wastegate set up here. It's a precision turbo wastegate. We're not going to dump it into the downpipe. We're going to do an external dump. We just got to figure out where we're going to dump it yet. So I'm always open to suggestions there. So moving on from there, going on to the inside of the engine, we got a new crankshaft we had to get replaced since there was damage to it. The connecting rod that actually got heated up was magnafluxed at the machine shop, and it turned out to be okay. We are reusing that. We got mainly connecting rods. We got CP pistons. We're running a Cosworth multi-layer head gasket. You can actually see it sticks out partially right there. With the head gasket and the size of the pistons, we should be running a 9-to-1 compression ratio. Also, we ended up boring the motor 30 over after measuring the cylinder walls. They were slightly out of round, and there's a little bit of taper, so we didn't want to lose power there, so we just bored it 30 over to be safe. A couple other things we had done too with the bearings and stuff like that. We sent them out to WPC to have them treated, and also the pistons. For many of you who don't know, WPC is a metal treatment process. It's like micro shot peening that alters the surface of the metal, so it's not just a coating. It actually creates like a golf ball effect on like a molecular level. In essence, it creates like a slippery surface, so if you have oil issues or oil starvation issues, it gives you a little extra time with low oil pressure to save your bearings. Now, I mean, you're not gonna run forever without oil pressure, but it gives you a little extra cushion, so if you're in a high G-force turn, it'll save you on wear in certain situations like that. Moving on from the engine, we're going over to the chassis of the car. So a little info about the car, it's a kooky model. So for those of you who don't know, that's a later generation S14 240. They've got glass headlights. Another little cool thing about that is it's actually got a little leveler built in for when you aim your headlights. So the engine bay has been repainted to like a bronze color. My idea behind this was we're gonna match the engine bay to the wheel color. It's gonna be a Cosmos style wheel. Deep dish wheel, something like that. We're gonna run. Not sure which model I want to go with yet, but that's what we're gonna do eventually. The wheel setup that we're currently running is an XXR 527, if I remember right. Looks pretty good in the car, but the biggest problem is the offset's not correct, so we have to run wheel spacers in the front. I'm not a big fan of that. I mean, as long as you do it right and get longer studs, it's okay, but I don't have longer studs installed yet, so we're gonna have to do longer studs, and then we're gonna get the correct wheel size when we get the Cosmos wheels, so we don't have to run the spacers anymore, so they don't rub on the coilover. For tires, we're doing a Michelin Super Sport. If you know tires, they're a pretty good tire. Not too bad. We'll see how they do. Haven't ran them yet. So a little overview of the car. It's stock body S14. I got the side skirts up on the shelf over there. They're not on right now. Got a little bit of rust to fix down there. Nothing too crazy. But yeah, stock rear bumper. Right now, we're just going to run this setup on the car. We're not going to do anything crazy with the body yet. Maybe eventually down the line we'll do a wide body kit, but right now we're just running this. Moving on to the interior of the car, it's pretty clean. It's dirty right now, but dashes on these ones didn't crack nearly as much as the S13s. It's the SE edition, so it has the different patterns in the doors, stuff like that. It's 5-lug. Gauges are a little bit different. They're spaced out a little bit compared to a regular setup where they're kind of more overlapped with the speedo and RPM. You can see that we actually run an Apexi Power FC standalone ECU. We're going to be changing that out because it's not I don't have the correct tuning software for it, and I don't feel like spending $400 to get the correct tuning software. We're not gonna just spend another another $400 and get a better ECU. We'll probably do like a Mega Squirt setup, and then with the seats, we'll probably stick with these for now. Eventually, we'll probably go to a bride style seat, but right now we're just gonna do that. You can see I got a little wideband. You see that we got a little wideband gauge set up here for the little center console piece, or for the little dash piece. Got to wire that up. We'll do a video on that and how to wire it up and make sure it's working correctly. So moving on to the suspension of the car, we got stance coilovers. They're kind of old. We'll eventually change these out, but we're going to run these for the time being. That's what we have. We got 300CX brakes on the car. They're the steel ones. They're not the aluminum ones, so they're a little bit heavier, but not too bad. We got the upgraded ISR tension arms, and you can see down there we got upgraded tie rods, upgraded lower control arms, so we can adjust bump steer and stuff like that, track width, give us more flexibility in our suspension setup. Moving on to the rear suspension, we got some upgraded ISR control arms, stuff like that, traction arms. We're probably going to do the lower control arms. Right now they're just stock. We got stock brakes in the rear, just upgraded brakes, or upgraded rotors and pads. Eventually we'll probably do a dual brake setup, so we can run an Hydro e-brake, or just go to a 300ZX caliper in the rear. So yeah, that's a quick overview of the car. We didn't go over everything that's done to it. We just went over the major stuff. There's a lot that still needs done to it. There's a big laundry list of stuff that still needs to be completed. So stay tuned. We're going to do more videos on stuff like that. We still got to do the engine teardown, partially because the front cover is leaking, and we just want to check it over because it's been sitting so long. After that, we're going to have to get the engine in the car, get the clutch, all that stuff assembled, get the trans in there, get the cross member, get the lines run for that. We got to fab up the downpipe because that's all going to be custom. The catback back is aftermarket, but the catback to the turbo is going to be all custom stuff, so we're going to do a video on that. Thanks everybody for tuning in. If you like what you saw today, stay tuned. We got more 240 videos coming, and we're going to have a couple new cars coming to the channel. Stay tuned. Have a good day. Bye.
Oh crikey mate, it's a wild 240 in its natural habitat. Look, if the motor's torn out of it and it doesn't run.